Hey guys, tonight we are not going to a palace or a battlefield. We're going somewhere far more intimate and a little bit damp. We're diving into the strange and wonderful world of medieval medicine to explore one of its most iconic and mildly absurd solutions for a common problem using leeches to cure a headache. I know. It sounds less like a soothing story and more like a biology class nightmare. But I promise you, we're going to handle this with the gentle, slightly mocking touch it deserves. No gore, just quaint cures. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel find other curious minds like yours. And in the comments, I'd love to know your city and what time it is for you right now. It's always a little magical to see where everyone is tuning in from across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up not because of the sun, but because a rooster, the pinnacle of medieval alarm clocks, has decided to practice for a screaming competition right outside your small, shuttered window. The light that seeps through the cracks in the wood isn't gentle. It's a sharp, painful splinter driving straight into your eye. But the real problem isn't the rooster or the light. It's the hammer. There is a tiny, malicious blacksmith living inside your skull, and he has just started his day's work. With every beat of your heart, he brings his hammer down on a tiny anvil located directly behind your right eye. C-L-A-N-G. Pose. C-L-A-N-G. Pose. The rhythm is relentless. The pain is breathtaking. It's a weight minus hot, blinding agony that makes the rough straw of your mattress feel like a bed of nails and the scratchy wool of your blanket feel like it's woven from fire. You are an apprentice perhaps to a weaver, a baker, or a cooper. Your day is meant to be filled with hard physical work, but right now, the simple act of lifting your head feels like trying to lift a millstone. You press the heels of your palms into your eye sockets, a desperate, useless gesture. This isn't the dull ache from cheap hail or a long day's work. This is a siege. You've already tried the usual remedies, the folk wisdom passed down from your grandmother. You've had a damp, cool cloth on your forehead for hours, but it provides only a fleeting moment of relief before the heat from your skin warms it up again. You've stayed in the darkest corner of the small room you share with two other apprentices. But the darkness doesn't stop the blacksmith. He seems to have brought his own forge. Your master, the gruff but not unkind man, has already offered his own diagnosis. He grumbled that you must have angered a saint or, more likely, that you were thinking impure thoughts yesterday during evening prayers. This, of course, is a mainstream and perfectly logical explanation for illness in your world. Sickness is often a sign of spiritual imbalance, a punishment for a misdeed, or the work of a mischief, a simp whispering painful nonsense into your ear. You've muttered a desperate prayer to Saint Bibiana, the patron saint against headaches, but so far, she seems to be ignoring your call. A truly quirky piece of lore you might have tried, if you were even more desperate, involves a headache charm. This could be a small, smooth river stone, blessed by a priest, which you are supposed to rub on your temple while reciting a specific verse. Or maybe it's a pouch of dried herbs, feverfew and rosemary that you're meant to sniff. You sniffed it. It just made you want to sneeze. An act you are certain would cause your head to explode. The world of medieval self minus care is a fascinating muddle of practical herbalism and magical thinking. Historians and medical anthropologists are still trying to untangle how much of it was based on observable effect versus pure faith. For instance, some folk remedies included willow bark, which we now know contains salicin, a chemical similar to aspirin. But was its use based on generations of noticing it worked? Or because the willow tree, which loves damp places, was considered a cool plant, and thus a logical antidote to a hot ailment like a headache? The line is almost impossible to draw. But today, none of it is working. The herbs, the prayers, the darkness, they are all failing. The blacksmith in your head is now working with a furious rhythm. Your vision is starting to swim at the edges. The smell of baking bread from the shop below is turning your stomach. You can't work. You can't eat. You can barely think. Your master, seeing your pathetic state and perhaps worrying about a lost day of productivity, makes a momentous decision. He reaches into the small coin pouch at his belt. This is beyond folk remedies. This requires a professional. You are going to see a physician. The thought is both terrifying and thrilling. A physician is a man of learning, of mysterious books written in Latin, and of expensive, powerful cures. And you have a sinking, yet hopeful, feeling that you know what his prescription will be. But the physician doesn't just appear. In your time, a learned doctor is a busy and important man. His arrival is an event, something that must be waited for. And so you lie there in the gloom, listening to the muffled sounds of the workshop below, with nothing to do but review the catalogue of cures that have already failed you. This is the folklore of pain, a tapestry of hope and herbs woven together through generations. First, there was the binding. Your master's wife, a woman of formidable practicality, had tied a strip of linen tightly around your forehead. The logic is simple and physical if the pain is caused by your head threatening to split apart. Then, holding it together should surely help. For a few blessed moments, the focused pressure provided a different sensation to concentrate on, a dull constriction that almost masked the sharp hammering behind your eye. But soon, the hammer always wins. The binding just becomes another layer of misery, a tight band on an already besieged fortress. Then came the herbal assault. The world outside your door is a living apothecary. If you know where to look, you've had a poultice applied to your temples, a gritty, damp paste of ground feverfew leaves and vinegar. Feverfew is the king of headache herbs. Its name is a promise of what it does. The sharp, clean scent of the vinegar and the bitter, green smell of the crushed leaves were supposed to draw out the heat from your head. You lay there, a sticky green circle drying on each temple, feeling foolish and still in agony. You've drunk a bitter tea brewed from rosemary and betony, said to clear the mind and soothe the spirits. It was warm and fragrant going down, but it did nothing to silence the blacksmith. This is the world of simples, remedies made from a single plant, and it is the bedrock of your medicine. But it's a world of immense complexity and contradiction. Historians in the future will spend their lives debating this very point: how much of your herbal lore was based on genuine, observable pharmacological effect, and how much was based on the doctrine of signatures and other magical thinking. The doctrine of signatures is the belief that God marked plants to indicate their use. A plant with a heart-shaped leaf must be good for the heart. One with a flower that looks like an eye must be good for vision. It's a beautiful, poetic system, but the terrible way to run a pharmacy. So was feverfew used because people noticed it actually reduced headache pain over centuries of trial and error? Or was it used because its small, bright flowers were thought to counteract the darkness of the pain? The truth is a hopelessly tangled root ball of both. When the herbs failed, you turned to more esoteric methods. There was the charm your fellow apprentice swore by. He'd lead you out to the small yard behind the workshop, to an old oak tree. The instructions were very specific. You had to press your forehead against the cool, rough bark and whisper your ailment into a small nothel in the trunk. You had to describe the pain in detail, effectively gifting it to the tree. Then, you were to plug the hole with a wad of your own hair and a bit of clay, trapping the headache inside the oak forever. You felt utterly ridiculous whispering to a tree, trying to explain the precise rhythm of the hammering in your skull. The oak, for its part, seemed unimpressed. You plugged the hole. The headache remained firmly in your possession. And of course, there were the endless prayers. But prayer is a tricky thing. If the headache is a test from God, then praying for it to end might be seen as failing the test. If it's a punishment, You must first figure out your sin and repent for it. You have mentally reviewed every questionable thought and deed from the past week, a frantic and painful spiritual accounting. You've apologized to God for laughing at the baker's new hat, for coveting a finely made knife you saw at the market, and for thinking uncharitable thoughts about the rooster. Nothing has worked. The blacksmith is an equal minus opportunity tormentor, caring little for your spiritual state. All these failures led to one conclusion, the conclusion that brings both fear and a sliver of hope. Your headache is not a common ailment. It is not something to be solved by a simple herb or a whispered charm. Your master and his wife have decided it is a malady of the humors, an imbalance in the very liquids that make up your body. This is a problem of the blood, and that kind of problem is beyond the scope of a poultice or a prayer. It requires a different kind of tool. It requires a different kind of expertise. A heavy footstep sounds on the wooden stairs outside your room. A deep, scholarly cough echoes in the small space. He is here, the man who speaks Latin, who has read the ancient Greeks, and who understands the mysterious tides of the body's hidden rivers. The physician has arrived, and you know he is not coming armed with herbs or prayers. He is bringing his tiny, silent, wiggling surgeons with him. The physician does not simply walk into the room. He eclipses it. He is a tall, stooped figure, and the moment he crosses the threshold, the already dim room seems to darken further, as if he has brought a piece of his own scholarly shadow with him. He is a man in his 50s, perhaps, with a neatly trimmed gray beard and eyes that seem to see more than they let on. He moves with a slow, deliberate gravity that makes everyone else in the room feel clumsy and rushed. He is dressed not in the rough homespun of your world, but in a long, dark robe of fine wool. It is not opulent, but it is impressively somber, the kind of garment that announces its owner's seriousness of purpose. On his head, he wears a soft, dark cap, the uniform of the learned man. His hands are surprisingly clean, the nails neatly pared, a rarity that sets him apart almost as much as his robes. You notice a faint, dark stain on the side of his index finger, the -, stale mark of ink. This is a man who spends his days with books, not tools. Your master, who normally fills every room with his booming voice and confident presence, seems to shrink. He greets the physician with a deference you've never seen him show anyone, a mix of respect and fear. He gestures towards you, a pathetic lump on the straw mattress. The physician, however, ignores you for a moment. His first act is to place his heavy leather satchel on the only small stool in the room with a soft, authoritative thud. The air, already thick with the scent of old straw and unwashed apprentices, is suddenly cut through by a new collection of aromas emanating from him and his bag. There is the faint, pleasant smell of dried lavender and rosemary, perhaps sewn into his clothes to ward off bad air. Beneath that is the sharper, more mysterious scent of old leather and paper, the smell of knowledge itself. And there is one more, a faint, spicy sweet smell you can't quite place. It's cloves. He might have been chewing one on his way here, a common practice among physicians to protect themselves from the miasmas, the bad airs believed to carry disease. He speaks, and his voice is not loud, but it has a low, rumbling quality that commands attention. He doesn't speak to you. He speaks to your master, the one paying the bill. His words are measured, and sprinkled with Latin phrases that fall like stones into the quiet room. Bene, et qualis est natura doloris? He might ask, inquiring about the nature of the pain. Your master, who knows no more Latin than a goose, can only stammer a simple description of your agony. The physician nods slowly, his gaze sweeping the room, taking in the dusty rafters, the single-shuttered window, the poverty of your surroundings. You get the distinct impression he is diagnosing the household as much as the patient. This figure, the university-trained physician, is a source of endless debate for future historians. Were these men brilliant, deductive minds, making the most of a deeply flawed medical framework? Were they keen observers of the human condition, doing their best to offer comfort and care? Or were they, in some cases, canny businessmen, masters of theatrics who used their mysterious knowledge in Latin phrases to justify exorbitant fees from desperate patients? The truth, as always, is complex. The man standing before you is likely a combination of all three: a genuine believer in his science, a skilled observer, and a man who understands the value of a good performance. He turns to his back to you for a moment. You hear the jingle of a metal clasp, a soft rustle. You imagine the contents perhaps small, corked glass, vials of rare tinctures, rolled scrolls of vellum with complex diagrams, maybe even a polished brass instrument for some unknown, terrifying purpose. The mystery of the bag is part of his power. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, he turns his full attention to you. His eyes, which had been distant and assessing, now focus on you with an unnerving intensity. It is not a look of sympathy or compassion. It is the look of a craftsman studying a piece of wood, or a scholar examining a difficult text. He is not looking at a suffering young apprentice. He is looking at a fascinating biological puzzle. You are no longer a person with a headache. You are a problem to be solved, an imbalance to be corrected, and his methodical, almost cold, examination is about to begin. Before the physician lays a hand on you, he begins to teach. He understands that a cure is more effective if the patient understands the profound and elegant science behind it. Or, more likely, he understands that a long and confusing explanation delivered with absolute authority will make the eventual fee seem more reasonable. He pulls the single stool closer to your bedside, his dark robe bristling, and begins to explain the universe as it exists inside your very own body. Your body, boy, he begins, his voice a low and even drone, is a microcosm, a small kingdom that mirrors the great world outside. He gestures vaguely towards the shuttered window. The world has for elements earth, air, fire, and water. It has for seasons spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So too, your body is governed by four vital fluids, the four humors. You stare at him blankly. The blacksmith in your head is still hammering away, making it difficult to concentrate on this philosophical lecture. He explains that perfect health is a state of perfect balance between these four humors. Sickness, like your headache, is never a random event. It is a sign of DYSC or Asia. An imbalance, one of your humors is in excess, or has become corrupted. His job, as a physician, is not to fight a disease, but to be a kind of gardener for your internal landscape, to gently prune the overgrowth and restore the natural, harmonious order. First, he explains, there is blood, or sanguis. It is hot and moist, like the air in springtime. It is the humor of life, of vitality, of cheerfulness. A person with a healthy amount of blood is optimistic and sociable, a sanguine temperament. He leans and unpeers at your face. Your cheeks are flushed. He observes. Your skin is hot to the touch. The blood is strong in you. This is presented not as a symptom of fever, but as a crucial diagnostic clue. Next is phlegm, or phlegme. This humor is cold and moist, like water in winter. It governs calmness, contentment, and the rational mind. A person in whom phlegm is dominant is a phlegmatic soul, unemotional, reliable, perhaps a little slow. An excess of it, he explains, can lead to sluggishness, apathy, and a runny nose. Then comes yellow bile, or childer. This is the humor of fire in summer, hot and dry. It is associated with the liver and fuels ambition, passion, and courage. A choleric person is a natural leader, a soldier, a man of action. The too much yellow bile, he warns, makes a man angry, vengeful, and easily irritated. Finally, he speaks of the most mysterious humor, black bile, or melancholia. It is cold and dry, like the earth in autumn. It is a heavy, dark fluid thought to originate in the spleen. In proper measure, it fosters deep thought, contemplation, and artistic sensitivity, but an excess of it leads to the dark sickness of the soul that bears its name melancholy. It brings sadness, fear, and visions. The physician pauses, letting this beautiful, symmetrical system settle in your aching head. It is a complete and self-contained explanation for all human life, personality, and illness, and the most remarkable thing about it, a point that future historians will marvel at, is that it persisted as the foundation of Western medicine for nearly 2,000 years, from the time of the ancient Greeks right up to the doorstep of the modern scientific era. Now, for a truly strange and specific tidbit of his craft, he might lean closer and mention that a true physician can even distinguish the humors by their properties. Blood is sweet, phlegm is rather tasteless or salty, yellow bile is intensely bitter, than black bile, he might muse, as a sharp, acidic soreness. The thought of anyone tasting these things is so bizarre it almost distracts you from the pain. The physician straightens up, his lecture drawing to its conclusion. The diagnosis is now clear, logical, and inevitable. Your headache, he declares, with the finality of a judge passing sentence, is a classic case of excessive sanguis rising to the head. The humor of blood, being hot and moist, has accumulated in your cranium, creating pressure and a boiling heat that you feel as a hammer behind the eye. He might briefly mention that there is some minor academic squabbling about the precise nature of black bile, whether it is a true, observable fluid or a more theoretical substance. The scholastics at Paris and Padua can abate such trivialities, he says with a dismissive wave of his hand. But, for a practicing physician, the evidence here is plain. This is not a malady of melancholy. The explanation is complete. Your pain has been given a name and a reason, a place in a grand, cosmic system. You are not the victim of a random affliction. You are a finely tuned instrument that has fallen out of harmony, and the cure is just as logical as the diagnosis. The excess humor must be removed. The pressure must be released. The boiling pot must be cooled. A small amount of the offending hot blood must be drawn directly from the source of the trouble. Having delivered his masterful diagnosis, the physician now proceeds to the examination. But this is not an examination you would recognize. He does not take your temperature, measure your pulse in a way you'd find familiar, or tap your joints. His methods are more subtle, more sensory. He is reading your body like a text, searching for clues that will confirm his theory of your humoral imbalance. First comes the visual inspection. He grasps your chin with a surprisingly firm grip and turns your head towards the sliver of light from the window. He peers intently into your eyes, not to check your pupils, but to observe the color of the whites and the state of the blood vessels. He murmurs to himself, "The vessels are engorged. The eyes are overly bright." This, to him, is a clear sign of the hot nature of your ailment. He then pulls down your lower eyelid. He is looking at the color of the flesh inside. Is it a healthy, rosy pink, or a pale, washed minus out color? Yours, he notes, is a deep, rich red, more evidence of an abundance of blood. He may even ask you to stick out your tongue. He studies its surface, its color, and its coating. Is it dry? Is it cracked? Is it coated with a yellow or white film? Each variation is a clue, a letter in the alphabet of your illness. Next, he leans in closer, and you become acutely aware of the scent of old books and clothes again. He is not being familiar. He is performing another diagnostic test. He takes a slow, deliberate sniff of your breath. A physician of his caliber believes he can detect the scent of corrupted humors. A sour smell might indicate an issue with the stomach. A sweet, cloying smell could be a sign of something else entirely. He breathes in, considers for a moment, and nods, as if he has just smelled the very heat he was describing. The examination then moves to a more intimate phase. He gestures for the small, lidded pot that has been sitting in the corner of your room since morning. This is the Euro's copy flask. Examination of the urine is one of the cornerstones of medieval diagnosis, a practice so central that the flask itself became a symbol of the medical profession. Your master brings the flask to him. The physician does not test it for sugar or protein. He holds it up to the light, swirling the contents gently. His first observation is color. He compares the shade of your urine to a complex color wheel, which he might have on a chart in his bag or may simply know by heart. Is it a pale straw color, suggesting an excess of phlegm, a fiery reddish minus orange, indicating choler, or a dark, almost black color, the dreaded sign of melancholy? Yours, he observes, is a healthy, normal yellow, but perhaps a little thick. His examination of the urine doesn't stop at color. He is also looking at its clarity, its density, and for any sediment, he might even give the flask a gentle shake to see how it foams. A particularly strange and debated part of this practice, which you hope he doesn't employ, was a taste test. Some medical texts advocated for tasting the urine to check for sweetness, a method that, centuries later, would be recognized as a way to diagnose diabetes. For now, however, it remains a rather stomach-minus-churning piece of medical lore. The historical debate here is not if physicians did it, but how common it was. Was it a standard procedure or an extreme measure for only the most puzzling cases? The physician sets the flask down, his face a mask of serene confidence. His initial theory has been confirmed at every step. The flushed face, the hot skin, the red-rimmed eyes, the strong pulse he feels when he finally lays his cool fingers on your wrist, it all points to one thing: sanguis. Too much hot, vibrant blood rushing around your system and collecting in your head. He may ask you a few questions, but they are not the questions you expect. He won't ask, "Why does it hurt?" He already knows. He might ask, "What did you eat for supper last night?" Certain foods were considered hot or cold, wet or dry, and could contribute to humoral imbalance. A meal heavy with red meat and red wine, both hot and wet, could easily exacerbate a sanguine condition. Finally, he straightens up, the examination complete. He has read the book of your body and is ready to write the conclusion. There is no doubt, no hesitation. The diagnosis is firm. The path forward is clear. His pronouncements feel less like a medical opinion and more like an immutable law of nature. He turns to your master. The boy's humors are in a state of aboliginal, he says, using a fancy word for boiling. The excess blood must be vented before it causes a more serious affliction, such as a frenzy or apoplexy. He looks at you, and for the first time, you detect something that might be a sliver of pity in his scholarly gaze. The cure will be simple, but necessary. He opens his leather bag. The time for talk is over. The time for treatment has arrived. The physician's hands move with a practiced slowness as he reaches into his leather satchel. The room is silent, save for the thumping of your own heart, which seems to have synchronized with the blacksmith's hammer. Your master and his wife watch with a mixture of awe and apprehension. You have all been convinced by the grand, logical theater of the diagnosis. Now comes the cure, which, in the elegant symmetry of humoral theory, is as obvious as it is unnerving. Since the malady is one of excess, the physician intones, as if concluding a geometric proof. The treatment must be one of evacuation. He pulls from his bag not a bottle of potion or a box of pills, but a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. He unwraps it on the stool, revealing several items. There's a small brass bowl, a clean linen cloth, and a vial of what looks like dark wine or vinegar. But your eyes are drawn to the centerpiece, a small, intricately carved wooden box, no bigger than your hand. It is dark from age and handling, and it seems to radiate a certain significance. This is where you expect to see the lancet, the small, sharp blade used for bloodletting. Phlebotomy is a common medical procedure, the go-minus to treatment for a vast array of ailments. It's a direct and efficient way to remove a large quantity of an offending humor, but the physician shakes his head slightly. If any section at the arm would be too general, he muses, almost to himself. The affliction is localized in the head. The treatment, therefore, should be equally precise. We need to draw the PEC humor directly from the seat of the trouble. He explains that opening a vein in your arm would drain the humors from your whole body, which is not what's needed. The problem is a traffic jam of hot blood in the vessels of your scalp and forehead. A more targeted approach is required. He could use a technique called wet cupping, which involves making small incisions on the skin and using a heated glass cup to create a vacuum and draw the blood out. It's effective, but messy. No, he decides, his voice now filled with the conviction of a master craftsman selecting his favorite tool. For a headache of this nature, there is no finer instrument than medicinal is. The medicinal leech. He looks directly at you, perhaps for the first time really seeing the fear in your eyes. Do not be alarmed. Boy, these are not the common horse leeches you find in any stagnant pond. These are God's own little physicians. They are clean, they are precise, and they carry a virtue that no man-made instrument can replicate. He taps the small wooden box. They will perform a flebite more gentle and more targeted than any I could accomplish with a blade. The use of leeches over a lancet for this specific issue is a point of some contention among medieval physicians, a subtle academic debate you are now the subject of. Some doctors, particularly those with a background in surgery, would argue for the speed and control of a blade. They might see leeches as a slower, less predictable method, perhaps better suited for women or children, but a physician like yours, a man of internal medicine and philosophy, sees a deeper elegance in using a living creature. He believes the leech doesn't just remove blood, it actively draws the vapors and the heat of the illness into its own body. It is not just a drain, it is a magnet for the malady. One of the more peculiar pieces of lore he might share is about the leech's own temperament. He might explain that leeches collected from clear, running water are considered more virtuous and lively than those from muddy, stagnant pools. The very environment the leech comes from is thought to affect its healing properties. It's a holistic view that extends even to your medicine. He continues to justify his choice, his words a soothing balm meant to counteract the alarming nature of the prescription. The leech's bite is a marvel. It feels like little more than a mosquito. It does not create a gaping wound, but a neat, tripartite mark, the very signature of the Holy Trinity. Some scholars say, he says this with a straight face, a perfect fusion of folk belief and medical practice, and it will not take too much. It knows when it is sated. It has a natural wisdom. It is a humble servant, performing its God-given role. He is not just prescribing a treatment, he is framing it as a natural, almost holy act. You are not about to be fed upon by blood-sucking worms. You are about to receive a gentle, divinely ordained rebalancing at the hands of nature's tiniest, most dedicated surgeons. The logic is impeccable. The delivery is masterful. The headache is still pounding, and the lid of the small wooden box, the box that contains your slimy prescription, is about to be opened. The physician's decision is final. The prescription has been written on the air of the room, but your doctor, a man of learning and status, does not stoop to the messy business of actually procuring the leeches himself. That is work for lesser hands. He gives a curt nod to your master, indicating that the next step is his, and so begins a new, smaller journey, the quest for the leeches. Your master, grumbling about the cost, but also clearly intrigued by this high-level medical drama, dispatches his other apprentice, a boy named Thomas, on this crucial errand. Thomas, delighted to be escaping the workshop for an hour, grabs a small cage, earned a few coins, and heads out into the bustling street. You are left to lie in the dim room, your throbbing head now filled with visions of what these tiny physicians might look like. Thomas has a few options. His first, and most likely, destination is the apothecary. You picture the shop a dark, aromatic place, its shelves crammed with hundreds of earthenware jars, glass bottles, and wooden boxes, all marked with cryptic labels. It's a library of smells of dried herbs, strange spices, beeswax, and chemicals you can't name. The apothecary himself is a man halfway between a merchant and a magician. He sells everything from common remedies like rosewater to exotic and fantastically expensive substances like powdered unicorn horn, which is, more often than not, the ground tusk of an earl. And in a cool, shaded corner of his shop, he will have a large, moss-filled ceramic crock. This is the leech jar. Alternatively, if your town is smaller or the apothecary is out of stock, Thomas might have to seek out a leech-y for a leech collector. This is a far less glamorous profession. You imagine an old woman who lives in a hut by the marshlands, her arms and legs permanently scarred with the tiny Y-shaped marks of her trade. She would be an expert on the local waterways, knowing exactly which pools and streams are home to the prized Hirudo medicinal is. Her method of collection is unsettlingly direct. She would simply wade into the water, bare minus-legged, and wait. The hungry leeches, attracted to the warmth of her body, would attach themselves to her skin. She would then pluck them off, one by one, and drop them into her collecting bucket. It's a strange, symbiotic relationship, a job that requires a high tolerance for being nibbled. This practice of leech collecting leads to a curious historical footnote: regional reputations. Leeches from certain areas were considered superior. For example, leeches imported from Sweden or Hungary were often advertised by apothecaries as being more vigorous and having a better appetite than the local English variety. A top-tier physician might even specify in his prescription that only fine Swedish leeches be used, a mark of his discerning and expensive taste. Thomas, being a practical boy, has gone straight to the town apothecary. You can almost hear the conversation. He would slide the jar and coins across the counter, asking for 3 good leeches for a headache. The apothecary, a shrewd man, would first assess the coins. The quality of the leeches provided often depended on the price paid. For a premium, he would select the finest specimens. For a bargain, he might offload some of his older, more sluggish stock. He would take a pair of long wooden forceps, reach into the slimy depths of his leech-crock, and the hunt would begin. The leeches, disturbed from their cool, mossy bed, would be writhing and uncoiling, a knot of dark, glistening bodies. The apothecary would expertly sort through them, looking for the ideal candidates. This selection process is a science in itself, a topic we'll explore more deeply in a moment. But as you lie there, imagining the scene, you are struck by the sheer strangeness of it all. The entire edifice of your learned physician's medical theory, with its Greek texts and Latin phrases, ultimately rests on a boy buying 3 worms from a man in a smelly shop. It is a system where profound intellectual abstraction meets the most basic, earthly reality. The historical debate here is about the supply chain. How robust was this trade in leeches? Was it a constant, reliable source, or was it subject to shortages? Medical records and household account books suggest that for centuries, the supply was plentiful. But by the time your story takes place, and especially in the centuries to follow, the demand would become so high that a genuine leech crisis would occur. The wild populations of medicinal leeches in Europe would be decimated by over-harvesting, leading to complex international trade routes and even the first attempts at commercial leech farming. Your simple headache is part of a much larger economic and ecological story. The minutes tick by. The blacksmith in your head has not stopped his work. Every sound from the street below are trembling by. A dog barking is a fresh torment. But then, you hear it. The sound of Thomas's lighter. Quicker footsteps on the stairs. He is back. He is carrying the small clay jar. Your tiny, slimy, wiggling doctors have arrived. Thomas places the clay jar on the floor with a quiet clink. The physician turns, his expression one of sober satisfaction. He picks up the jar, removes the small piece of cloth tied over its mouth, and peers inside. It is now his responsibility to perform the final quality control to ensure these tiny surgeons are fit for the task at hand. Selecting the right leech is as important as selecting the right herb or the right prayer. He reaches into his bag and withdraws a pair of delicate bronze forceps, a much finer instrument than the apothecary's crude wooden tongs. With the focus of a jeweler examining a gem, he carefully lifts one of the leeches from the jar. It dangles from the forceps, a glistening, olive-minus green teardrop of life. It coils and uncoils slowly, a ribbon of muscle contracting and expanding. "Ah, a good one," he murmurs, more to himself than to anyone else. What is he looking for? What are the criteria for a good medicinal leech? First and foremost is hunger. A leech that has recently fed will be sluggish and have no interest in attaching to you. Your physician needs a leech with a healthy appetite. He can judge this by its behavior. A hungry leech is active and exploratory. It will stretch out, questing with its smaller, oral sucker, searching for a warm body. The one he holds is doing just that, its narrow head swaying back and forth like a tiny, blind serpent. But it cannot be too hungry. This is a finer, more esoteric point of the art. A leech that has been starved for too long might be desperate or aggressive. It might bite too quickly, without the proper finesse, or it might be weak and ineffective. There is a sweet spot of peak leech performance that an experienced physician can judge simply by its appearance and vigor. Next, he examines its physical condition. The leech should have a smooth, slightly moist skin. It should be free of any blemishes, growths, or discoloration. He notes the characteristic pattern. On its back, a series of faint or injure reddish stripes against the darker green or brown background. This is the mark of a true Hirudo medicinal is. He is distinguishing it from lesser, commoner species, like the horse leech, which has a much less refined bite and, according to some texts, can cause inflammation. He also assesses its size. For a headache, he requires medium-sized leeches. Leeches that are too large would draw too much blood, potentially leaving you weak and faint. Leeches that are too small might not draw enough to have the desired therapeutic effect. The three in the jar seem to be of a perfect, uniform size, a testament to the apothecary's skill, or perhaps to the price your master paid. One of the most peculiar and debated criteria is the leech's mood or temperament. Some ancient texts, like those of the Roman writer Pliny the Elder, suggest that leeches are sensitive to their environment. A thunderstorm, for instance, could make them agitated and unwilling to bite. A good physician, therefore, might take the weather into account. The sky today is clear. The air is still. It is a good day for leeching. There is also the matter of preparation. Before use, the leeches need to be cleaned. The physician dips each one briefly into a small bowl of clean water, or perhaps the weak wine he brought, to wash off any slime or dirt from the apothecary's jar. Then he places them on a clean, dry linen cloth. This mild drying process is thought to make them even more eager to bite, as they will seek out the moisture of your skin. The historical argument here is about the level of standardization. While your physician follows a meticulous, almost ritualistic procedure, was this the norm? Or was it more common for a rushed country barber-surgeon to simply grab a few leeches from a jar and slap them on a patient without this careful consideration? The reality likely varied enormously based on the practitioner's training, the patient's status, and the urgency of the situation. Your treatment today is the top-tier, gold-standard version of the procedure. The physician has now selected his team, 3 perfect leeches, cleaned and ready. Now rest on the linen cloth. They are no longer just pond-dwellers. They have been elevated. They are medical instruments, primed and prepared. He has inspected them, approved of them, and is now ready to introduce them to their patient. You watch, mesmerized and terrified, as he picks up the cloth. The time for selection is over. The time for application is about to begin. Your 3 tiny, hungry doctors are coming for you. The 3 leeches are chosen. They lie on the linen cloth, a small, squirming trinity of hope. Now, the focus shifts from them to you. The physician understands that the patient's environment and state of mind are as crucial to the success of a treatment as the treatment itself. You are not just a piece of meat to which leeches are applied. You are a patient to be prepared, an ecosystem to be primed for rebalancing. First, the room itself is attended to. The physician, with a quiet command, has your master's wife open the wooden shutter just a crack, not to let in a painful glare of light, but to allow a gentle circulation of air. The bad air or miasma that has built up in the sick room must be allowed to escape to further purify the atmosphere. She places a small bowl of smoldering herbs on the floor in the corner. It's not incense for prayer, but a medicinal fumigation. The fragrant, gray smoke of dried rosemary and lavender fills the small room, a scent intended to calm the spirits and fight off any airborne pestilence. Next, the physician turns his attention to the site of application. He has already determined that your temples are the ideal location to draw the hot blood away from your brain. But a leech will not bite just anywhere. It is a discerning creature, and the skin must be made inviting. He takes a corner of the clean linen cloth, dips it into the vial of wine or vinegar, and begins to gently but firmly wash your right temple. The coolness of the liquid is a momentary shock, a brief relief from the burning heat of your skin. He rubs with a circular motion, removing any sweat, oil, or grime. This is done for 2 reasons. Firstly, it cleans the area. While you do not have a concept of germ theory, there is an innate understanding that clean wounds heal better than dirty ones. Secondly, and more importantly in his mind, it removes any offensive sense that might deter the leech. If your skin is particularly cool or clammy, a sign, perhaps, that your phlegmatic humor is fighting back. He might do the opposite. He might rub the area with a rougher cloth to increase circulation and bring a flush of warm blood to the surface. A leech is drawn to heat, and he is essentially ringing the dinner bell for it. Then comes a stranger, more specific part of the preparation. He might take a tiny drop of milk or a speck of sugared water and dab it onto the precise spot where he wants the leech to bite. It's a form of bait, a sweet invitation to encourage the creature to attach exactly where he deems most effective. This is a neat trick that separates the skilled physician from the clumsy amateur. Now, he prepares you. He has you lie back flat on the straw mattress, your head turned to one side. He speaks to you in a low, soothing monotone, the same voice he used to explain the 4 humors. He tells you to breathe slowly, to remain calm, and to trust in the wisdom of the cure. His bedside manner is a powerful tool. He is using his voice and his serene confidence to reduce your fear, which he believes is a cold and constricting emotion that could interfere with the free flow of humors he is trying to achieve. One of the more peculiar and debated aspects of this preparation is the use of music or sound. In some historical accounts, for particularly nervous or important patients, a musician might be present, softly plucking a lute or a harp. The gentle, harmonious music was thought to soothe the patient's soul and, by extension, harmonize their physical humors, making the body more receptive to treatment. You don't get a lutenist today, you're only an apprentice. After all, but the principle is the same. The physician's voice is your music. He has created a calm, controlled, and purposeful environment. The air is clean and fragrant. Your skin is prepared. Your mind is, if not at ease, at least subdued by his authority. Everything is ready. He has set the stage for the main event with meticulous care. He looks at you one last time. A final assessment. He gives a slow, satisfied nod. The patient is prepared. He picks up the linen cloth holding the 3 leeches. With his other hand, he reaches for a small, hollow tube, perhaps a reed or a glass cylinder. From his bag, this is the leech glass, a guiding tube to ensure a perfectly aimed application. He holds the first leech, dark and glistening, In his forceps, he gently coaxes it into the end of the tube. He turns towards your temple. The preparation is over. The moment has come. The world narrows to a single point of focus, the side of your head. The physician leans over you, his shadow falling across your face. The scent of lavender and his wool robe fills your senses. He holds the small glass tube, the leech glass, against your right temple, its rim cool on your feverish skin. Inside the tube, you can't see it, but you can feel a tiny, almost imperceptible shifting. It's the leech, exploring its new, confined space. You hold your breath. Your muscles are tense. You are bracing for a sting, a bite, a sharp pain like a needle. You have been stung by bees and bitten by ants. You know what to expect when a small creature attacks. You clench your fists, your knuckles white, waiting for the inevitable moment of pain that will surely eclipse the hammering in your skull, if only for a second. The physician murmurs, "Stay still, boy. Let the little physician do its work." And then, it happens, but it is not what you expect at all. There is no sharp sting. There is no jolt of pain. Instead, there is a sudden, distinct sensation of cold. It is a tiny, concentrated point of icy dampness, as if a single drop of near-minus frozen water has been placed on your skin. It is so surprisingly cold that it makes you flinch, not from pain, but from sheer surprise. This is the leech's oral sucker, its primary means of attachment, making contact. It is a powerful, muscular disc, and its first touch is cool, soft, and slightly slimy. For a moment, nothing else happens. The leech is simply holding on, assessing the site. You can feel the faint, persistent pressure of the glass tube around it. Then, a new sensation begins, and it is even stranger. It's a feeling of vibration, a very fine, rapid, sawing motion. It doesn't hurt. It's too small and too fast to register as pain. It's more of a tickle, a tiny, buzzing irritation. It's a deeply weird feeling. The sensation of being gently gnawed upon by a creature with the texture of a wet mushroom. This is the moment of the bite. The leech has 3 razor-minus sharp jaws, arranged in a Y-minus shape, each lined with up to 100 tiny teeth. These jaws are now moving back and forth with incredible speed, slicing through the outer layers of your skin. It's happening on such a microscopic level that your nerves can't quite process it as a wound. The physician, seeing your wetch, presses the tube a little more firmly. "Patience," he whispers. The historical accounts of patients often mention this surprise. People expecting a vicious bite were frequently shocked by the relative painlessness of the procedure. This is, of course, the leech's evolutionary genius at work. A creature that makes its living by feeding on unsuspecting hosts for long periods cannot afford to announce its presence with a painful bite. Its entire survival depends on stealth. The debate among medical historians is whether physicians of your era understood why it was painless, or if they simply attributed it to the leech's gentle nature, another sign of its divine purpose. After a few seconds, the buzzing, thawing sensation stops. The leech has made its incision. And now, a new feeling begins to spread from the tiny spot of pleasant, localized numbness. The area immediately around the bite begins to feel fuzzy and distant, as if it's no longer quite part of your body. The skin there is becoming anesthetized. The physician, satisfied that the first leech has securely attached, carefully withdraws the glass tube, and there it is, now visible at the edge of your vision. A small, dark, glistening shape, clinging firmly to your temple. It looks impossibly small to be the source of such a cascade of strange sensations. He watches it for a moment, and you see the leech's body begin to subtly undulate. The gentle, rhythmic pulsing, it has started to draw blood. The first cool touch is over. The main phase of the treatment, the slow, silent, and steady work of your tiny doctor, has just begun. The physician reaches for the second leech. The initial shock of that first cool, damp touch is over. The physician has now successfully applied a second leech to your temple, a little distance from the first, and a third one behind your ear, a spot he deems is connected by a crucial vessel. The room settles into a deep, watchful quiet. Your master and his wife have backed away, giving the physician and his instruments a wide berth. All there is to do now is wait. You lie on the straw pallet, your head turned to the side, trying to make sense of the new sensations. The hammering of the headache is still there, a deepened, persistent bass note of pain. But now there are other, stranger melodies playing on the surface. The areas where the leeches are attached no longer feel numb. They have progressed to a feeling of nothingness. The skin itself is absent. Instead, you are aware of a gentle, constant, and rhythmic pulling. It is not a tug. It is more subtle than that, like a slow, deep, and steady suction. It is a feeling of being subtly drained. It's a hypnotic, meditative sensation that, in a bizarre way, gives your tormented mind something new to focus on. You find yourself concentrating on the rhythm of it. This soft, insistent pull, pull, pull. It is a tangible manifestation of the physician's theory, the excess humor. The source of your pain is being drawn out. You risk a glance towards the physician. He is not idle. He sits on the stool, watching the leeches with the focused patience of a fisherman watching his floats. He is observing their progress. He watches their bodies, which were initially slim and dark, begin to slowly expand and lighten in color. You can see the dark blood you were told is boiling in your head now, filling their translucent forms, turning them from sleek, olive-green creatures into plump, reddish-brown sacks. They are balloons being slowly inflated with your headache. This is a moment of profound therapeutic theater. The visual evidence is undeniable. The bad stuff is coming out. You can see it. This visual confirmation is a powerful part of the cure, a psychological bomb that is perhaps as potent as any physical effect. Sometimes, a leech can be lazy. It might attach but not draw blood with enough vigor. In such a case, the physician might intervene. A quirky but common technique was to sprinkle a little salt or powdered ginger on the leech's back and its dorsal side. This mild irritation was believed to annoy the leech and encourage it to suck more forcefully, as if to say, "Get on with it, your leeches today." However, seem to be working with quiet diligence. The historical debate around this part of the process is about the placebo effect, though you wouldn't have a name for it. How much of the relief that patients reported was due to the actual removal of blood, and how much was due to the powerful combination of the doctor's authority, the elaborate ritual, the strange new sensations, and the visible proof that the illness was being drawn out? It's impossible to quantify, but it's undeniable that the entire performance is designed to convince you that you are getting better. The time stretches on. It might be 10 minutes. It might be 30. The blacksmith in your skull seems to be slowing down. Or is he? It's hard to tell. Is the hammering truly becoming less intense? Or are you just so utterly absorbed by the bizarre sensation of being gently drained by 3 creatures on your head that you've simply stopped noticing the pain as much? You feel a strange drowsiness begin to creep over you. The room feels warmer. The physician's shadow softer. The gentle, constant pull from your temple is a deeply weird, but not unpleasant, anchor in a sea of pain. You are not just a passive patient. You are a participant in a living, breathing cure. Your body is the vessel. The leeches are the tools, and the physician is the orchestrator. You can feel the great, complex system of humoral medicine playing out on your own skin. The hot blood is being evacuated. The pressure is being released. The balance is, with every gentle pulse of the leeches, being restored. Whether it's real or not, it feels profoundly true. And in your world, feeling is a powerful form of reality. As you lie there in a state of strange, drowsy calm, your mind begins to wonder. The initial fear has been replaced by a deep curiosity. How can this be? How can a creature bite you, slice into your skin, and then proceed to drink your blood for the better part of an hour, all without causing any real pain? The physician told you it was due to the leech's gentle nature, a sign of its divine purpose. But the truth, which you will never know, is far more ingenious. It is a masterpiece of biochemical engineering, a secret hidden in the slime. The magic is in the leech's saliva. When a leech bites, it doesn't just start sucking. It begins to secrete a complex chemical cocktail into the wound, a veritable potion that manipulates your body's own systems for the leech's benefit. This saliva is the key to the entire operation. The first and most important ingredient is a powerful local anesthetic. This is what you felt moments after the initial buzzing bite, that spreading numbness, the feeling that your own skin was becoming distant and fuzzy. The chemicals in the saliva effectively block the nerve endings in the immediate area from sending pain signals to your brain. It's a highly targeted, incredibly effective nerve block. The leech is, in essence, injecting you with its own unique brand of Novocaine, ensuring that its host remains placid and unaware while it feeds. The second ingredient is a vasodilator. This is a substance that causes the tiny blood vessels, the capillaries, in the surrounding tissue to open up or dilate. This increases the blood flow directly to the bite site, making it much easier for the leech to get a good, steady meal. It's like a diner who not only brings his own fork, but also chemically coerces the kitchen into providing better service. But perhaps the most famous and crucial component is the anticoagulant. Your blood has a natural, life-saving ability to clot. When you get a cut, tiny cells called platelets rush to the site, and a complex chain reaction involving proteins like fibrin creates a mesh that plugs the wound. This is a disaster for a leech. A clot would stop the flow of blood and end its meal prematurely. To combat this, leech saliva contains a potent anticoagulant. The most famous one, which wouldn't be isolated unnamed until the 20th century, is called hiratin. This substance is one of the most powerful natural blood thinners known. It specifically targets and inhibits thrombin, a key enzyme in the clotting cascade. By neutralizing your body's clotting mechanism at the bite site, the leech ensures that the blood remains thin and free, flowing for the entire duration of its meal. The tap remains open. This is why, as you'll soon discover, a leech bite bleeds for so long after the leech has detached. The hiratin remains in the tissue for hours, preventing a clot from forming. To a medieval physician, this prolonged, gentle bleeding is a wonderful bonus, a sign that the bad humors are continuing to drain away long after the treatment is officially over. There's even evidence that leech saliva contains antibiotics. This is a more recent discovery, but it helps explain why leech bites, despite being open wounds made by a creature from a pond, rarely became infected. The leech, it seems, sterilizes the wound as it goes. The historical debate here is a fascinating one. For centuries, physicians and naturalists knew that leech bites were painless and bled for a long time. They observed these effects with great accuracy, but their explanation for why was entirely based on their humoral framework. They didn't see it as a chemical process. They saw it as a virtue or property of the leech. They might say the leech has a subtle spirit that soothes the flesh, or an anti-coagulative faculty. They were describing the results of biochemistry using the language of philosophy. They knew the what with great precision, but the how was a complete mystery, the black box of biological magic. So as you lie there, feeling that gentle, painless, rhythmic pulling, you are not just being treated by a simple worm. You are at the receiving end of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The leech has perfected a form of surgery that is, in many ways, far more sophisticated than any technique your learned physician could devise with his own hands. You are experiencing the profound and slightly unsettling genius of nature's most dedicated phlebotomist. The gentle, rhythmic pulling continues. It has become the new reality. You are a vessel, being slowly and meticulously emptied of your ailment. Your trust in the physician is absolute. He diagnosed the problem with unshakable certainty, and he prescribed the cure with philosophical elegance. The placement of the leeches on your temples and behind your ear feels so obviously correct. The pain is in your head, so the cure must be applied to your head. It is simple, it is logical, but was it the only choice? In the vast and complex world of humoral medicine, nothing is ever quite that simple. The physician's decision was not one of mere convenience. It was a choice made from a wide menu of possibilities, each with its own deep, theoretical justification. Your body, it is mind, is not a simple container. It is a landscape crisscrossed by a network of vessels, channels, and invisible pathways. It is a map, and where you place the leech is as important as the leech itself. This entire system of medical geography is built upon the works of the great physicians of the past, Hippocrates and, most importantly, Galen of Pergamon, the Roman physician whose writings formed the unshakable bedrock of your medicine for over 1,000 years. According to their theories, different parts of the body are sympathetically linked. A problem in one area can be influenced by treating another, sometimes distant, part. The physician's choice for you, the temple, is the most direct approach. This is known as local bleeding. The logic is, as you assumed, straightforward. The bad blood has pooled in your head, creating a stubborn traffic jam of sanguis. Therefore, the most efficient way to relieve the pressure is to open a release valve right at the site of the congestion. This is the common minus sense option, the one most easily understood by a patient. However, a different physician, or even your physician on a different day, might have opted for a more subtle location. He might have placed the leeches exclusively on the nape of your neck. Why? Because he might believe that the primary vessels supplying the hot vapors to the brain run up the back of the neck. By placing the leeches there, he wouldn't just be draining the pool of bad blood. He would be intercepting the supply line, cutting the problem off at its source. This is where the great medical minds of your age would have a lively, ink-stained debate in the halls of universities like Padua, Paris, or Bologna. They would argue passionately, citing different passages from Galen or his great Arab interpreters like Avicenna, about the precise network of connections. Does the vessel behind the ear have a more direct connection to the frontal part of the brain than the temple? The arguments would be fierce, highly intellectual, and based on textual interpretation rather than anatomical dissection, which was still a rare and controversial practice. But the options get even stranger, and this is where you encounter a truly bizarre and wonderful piece of medical theory. The physician could have chosen to place the leeches on your feet. Yes, your feet, to cure a headache. This is not madness. It is the height of medical sophistication. It is the technique known as restorative or derivative bleeding. The goal here is not to drain the bad blood from the site of the pain, but to actively and powerfully draw it away. The body is a vertical system. By opening a channel at the lowest point, you can encourage the excess humors that have risen to the head to flow downwards. Attracted by the new exit, you are not just draining a swamp, you are diverting the entire river. This was considered a very powerful and elegant technique. The physician would have gravely examined your ankles, searching for the prominent veins. He would have applied the leeches there, and the entire cure for your searing headache would have taken place a full 5 feet away from the pain. It's a concept that is both profoundly logical within their system and utterly bizarre to an outside observer. So why did he choose your temple? Perhaps he deemed your case to be simple, a straightforward local excess that didn't require such a dramatic, systemic intervention as restorative therapy. Perhaps your particular humoral makeup, your temperament, suggested that a direct approach would be most effective. Or perhaps it was a matter of tradition and training. His master taught him that for a sanguine headache, the temple is always the correct answer. You will never know the exact reasoning, the complex diagnostic tree he climbed in his mind before making his decision. All you know is that you are the recipient of a bespoke, personalized cure. The location of the 3 tiny, pulling mouths on your head is not accidental. It is the result of 2,000 years of medical theory, fierce academic debate, and the deep personal wisdom of your physician. And this knowledge, in its own strange way, is profoundly comforting. Time has lost its sharp edges. How long have you been lying here? Long enough for the single shaft of light from the window to have crept across the floorboards. The world has been reduced to the four walls of this room, the rhythmic pulling at your temples, and the low, continuous drone of the physician's voice. He has not been silent. A good physician understands that the mind must be treated along with the body, while the leeches are rebalancing your humors. He has taken it upon himself to rebalance your ignorance. He is giving you a lecture, a rambling, deeply learned monologue that is part medical history, part philosophical treatise, and part justification for his fee. His voice is calm and even, a stark contrast to the agony you were in just an hour ago. He speaks of the great masters, the titans of medicine whose wisdom guides his every move. The name he mentions most is Galen. To your physician, Galen is not just a historical figure. He is a presence in the room, a supreme authority whose teachings are as infallible as scripture. As Galen himself wrote in his De Method, Domed and I, the physician might begin, quoting the title of a famous work. The duty of the physician is to be the servant of nature. We do not conquer illness. We merely assist the body in finding its own equilibrium. These leeches, you see, are my humble assistants in that noble task. He explains that Galen, through his tireless work and observation, though he mostly dissected pigs and apes, not humans, mapped the entire system of the humors and their corresponding temperaments. It was Galen who perfected the understanding of how food, climate, and emotion could affect a person's health. You are not just being treated by a local doctor. You are receiving the distilled wisdom of the Roman Empire's greatest medical mind. Then he will shift his focus, perhaps to honor the great Arab scholars who preserved and expanded upon the classical texts during the long centuries when Europe was mired in darkness. He speaks of Avicenna, the Persian polymath, whose monumental work, the Canon of Medicine, is the other great pillar of his library. Avicenna, a mind of unparalleled brilliance, he drones on, provided us with the most detailed pharmacopoeia. He catalogued hundreds of simple herbs and minerals and their effects on the humors, while your case, boy, required a directive actuation rather than a mere herbal remedy. One must always appreciate the subtlety of his work. He might mention a truly peculiar tidbit from Avicenna's canon, the use of music therapy. Avicenna, he explains, believed that certain musical modes had specific effects on the humors. Some melodies could soothe an excess of choler, while others could elevate a melancholic spirit. The idea that a lute could be as powerful a medical instrument as a leech is a beautiful, a strange concept. This lecture is not just for your benefit. It is also for your master, who stands listening by the door, his expression one of complete, mystified reverence. The physician is performing his learning, demonstrating the immense body of knowledge that separates a university-trained doctor from a common barber, surgeon, or a villager way. The fee your master will pay is not for 3 leeches. It is for the accumulated wisdom of Galen and Avicenna, channeled through their humble servant. The historical debate here is about the nature of this knowledge. Was the endless citation of ancient authorities a sign of true learning? Or was it a form of intellectual stagnation? By treating the texts of Galen as perfect and infallible, did medieval medicine prevent itself from making new discoveries based on direct observation? For centuries, if a physician observed something in a patient that contradicted Galen, the assumption was often that the patient was unusual, not that Galen could be wrong. This deep reverence for ancient texts was both the strength that preserved knowledge and the weakness that could stifle innovation. The physician's lecture meanders. He might touch upon the influence of the stars, how your birth under a certain constellation might predispose you to a sanguine temperament. He might discuss the importance of a balanced diet, warning you against an excess of hot foods like garlic and mustard. The universe he describes is one of immense and intricate connection. where a planet, a pepperkin, and a personality are all part of the same grand, harmonious system. You are not following all of it. The words wash over you, a soothing tide of incomprehensible importance. The blacksmith in your head has definitely packed up his tools and gone home for the day. Is it the leeches? Is it the lecture? Is it sheer exhaustion? You don't know. You only know that the agonizing, sharp hammering has been replaced by a dull, distant ache, and a profound sense of drowsiness. The physician's voice is the last thing you are aware of as your eyelids grow heavy. You are drifting off to sleep on a cloud of Latin phrases and ancient wisdom, your 3 tiny doctors still clinging faithfully to your head. You drift in a shallow, gray sea of near-minus sleep. The physician's lecture has become a distant, meaningless hum. The only things that feel real are the rhythmic pulling at your temples and the heavy, welcome quiet that has finally descended inside your skull. The blacksmith is gone. The siege is over. You are roused from this peaceful stupor by a subtle change in sensation. One of the pulling feelings at your temple has simply stopped. It's not a gradual release, but an abrupt absence. A moment ago there were 2 points of gentle suction on your temple, and now there is only one. It is followed, a moment later, by a tiny, soft plop as something small and wet lands on the linen cloth the physician had prudently placed beside your head. You open your eyes. The physician is leaning over you, a satisfied smile on his face. "Though," he says softly, "the first one is finished. It has taken its fill." He points with his forceps to the linen cloth. There on the white fabric lies the first leech, but it is transformed. It is no longer the slim, dark, energetic creature he applied to your skin. It is a bloated, swollen, torpedo-minus shaped sack. It is 3, maybe 4 times its original size. Its skin stretched taut and glossy. Its color has changed from a dark olive minus green to a deep, purplish minus red, the color of a ripe plum. It is, for all intents and purposes, a small, living bag of your own blood. It lies on the cloth, torpid and content. Its work is done. It has drunk its fill of your pee. You see, can't humor your excessive hot blood, and in doing so, has become saturated with it. According to the physician's theory, the leech has not just removed the bad blood, it has absorbed the very essence of your ailment. It is now a living container of your cured headache. A few minutes later, the second leech on your temple follows suit. The pulling sensation ceases, and with another soft, wet thud, it joins its companion on the cloth. Finally, after a little more time, the third one, the one behind your ear, detaches itself and falls. The treatment is complete. The trio of tiny physicians, now full and happy, lie in a small, glistening pile, their job expertly performed. This moment of detachment is a crucial part of the procedure, and one that highlights the natural wisdom the physician spoke of earlier. The leech stops when it is full. This is seen as a great advantage over a clumsy venesection with a lancet, where a nervous barber minus surgeon might take too much blood and leave the patient faint and weak. The leech, in its God minus given wisdom, knows the proper dose. It takes exactly what is needed and no more. Of course, sometimes a leech is particularly stubborn. It might cling on long after its companions have finished. In such cases, the physician would not pull it off. Tearing a leech from the skin is a cardinal sin of the practice, as it can leave the leech's tiny teeth embedded in the wound, causing inflammation and, as you would say, infection. Instead, he would use gentle persuasion. A peculiar but effective method was to apply something the leech finds distasteful to its mouth. A touch of salt, a drop of vinegar, or even the ash from a burnt piece of cloth would be enough to make it release its grip immediately. It's the leech equivalent of being presented with a bill you have no intention of paying. The historical debate here revolves around the quantity of blood removed. How much blood does a leech actually take? Modern scientific studies have shown that a single medicinal leech will ingest about 5 to 15 milliliters of blood, a couple of teaspoons at most. However, due to the anticoagulant iridan, the bite will continue to ooze for several hours afterwards, and this post-leech bleeding can account for another 20 to 50 milliliters. So, 3 leeches might remove a total amount of blood equivalent to a modern blood donation. Was this enough to have a real physiological effect on a headache? It's debatable, but for you, lying on the straw, the visual and sensory evidence is overwhelming. The procedure feels significant. It feels complete. The physician carefully prods one of the engorged leeches with his forceps. It barely moves. A picture of blissful satiety. Excellent, he declares. The humors are calmed. The balance is restored. You sit up slowly. Your head feels light, almost floaty. The agonizing, sharp pain is gone, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache where the leeches were. But that ache is a relief. A welcome sensation compared to what came before. The world looks clearer. The room seems brighter, but in a good way. The cure, as strange and anticlimactic as its ending was, appears to have worked. The 3 bloated leeches lie in a glistening pile on the linen cloth, monuments to a successful treatment. The dramatic part is over, but the physician's work is not quite done. The aftermath of the procedure, the post-operative care, as he might grandly call it, is just as important as the application itself. He turns his attention back to you. The sites where the leeches were attached are now bleeding freely. It's not a dramatic gush, but a slow, steady, and persistent ooze of dark blood that trickles down your temple and behind your ear. To your modern eyes, this might be alarming, a sign that the wounds are not closing. To the physician, this is a beautiful and desirable outcome. Excellent, he murmurs, observing the bleeding with satisfaction. The channels remain open. The last of the corrupt vapors can now escape. He sees this continued bleeding not as a side effect, but as a beneficial extension of the cure. The anticoagulant properties of the leech's saliva, which he understands as a faculty that prevents the blood from congealing, are helping to purify your system even after the leeches have finished their meal. He allows the sites to bleed for a few more minutes, watching the color and consistency of the blood. He might even dab a little of it with the corner of his cloth, rubbing it between his fingers. Is it overly thick? Is it a healthy, vibrant reed, or a dark, almost black color that would indicate the dregs of melancholy mixed in? This is the final stage of his diagnosis, reading the very substance of your ailment as it leaves your body. Finally, he decides that enough of the offending humor has been evacuated. It is time to clean and dress the wounds. He takes a fresh piece of linen, dips it into his vial of wine, a good, strong, sour wine, and gently cleans the blood from your skin. The alcohol stings for a moment, a sharp contrast to the painless bite of the leeches, but it's a clean, clarifying pain. In your world, this is not done for antiseptic reasons, as the concept of microbes is centuries away. It is done because wine is a hot and drying substance, and applying it to the cold and wet wound is thought to promote proper healing by restoring balance at the site. He then opens a small tin from his bag. It contains a thick, greenish salve. It smells strongly of herbs and beeswax. This is his own special dressing, a recipe perhaps passed down from his master, or one he has perfected himself. It could contain any number of ingredients comfrey, known as a bone. To encourage the skin to heal, yarrow, called herbamilliter, is for its ability to staunch bleeding, or plantain, a common weed with powerful soothing properties. He applies a small amount of this cool, waxy salve directly onto the bites. This is where you see the tiny, distinctive mark left by the leech. It's not a simple hole. It's a perfect 3- star, a tiny Y- shaped incision. It's the signature of medicinal is, a mark that will be faintly visible on your temple for weeks to come, a small scar telling the story of your headache. Over the salve, He places a small wad of clean, carded wool or a square of fresh linen as a dressing. He does not use sticky plasters. He secures the dressing with a long, thin linen bandage, which he wraps snugly, but not too tightly, around your head. The bandage serves to hold the dressing in place and apply a gentle pressure to finally stop the bleeding. You are now bandaged like a wounded soldier. You sit up on the edge of the pallet. The world feels steady. The nausea is gone. The blinding pain has been replaced by a dull, localized ache and a profound sense of lightness. Did the leeches cure you? Did the physician's lecture soothe you into submission? Did the sheer drama and strangeness of the last hour simply distract your brain into forgetting the pain? You don't know. Then you don't care. You feel better. The historical debate here is a simple one. Did it work? It's impossible to say for sure. Headaches, particularly migraines, can have a natural cycle and often recede on their own. The entire procedure, from the physician's calming presence to the strange new sensations and the release of endorphins from the novelty of the experience, could have created a powerful placebo effect. And yet, for thousands of years, countless patients, just like you, swore by it. For you, in this moment, the evidence is clear. You were in agony. The physician came. He applied his tiny doctors, and now the agony is gone. The conclusion is inescapable. The leeches worked. The physician packs his bag. His movements neat and efficient. The cure is complete. His job is done. All that remains is the small but significant matter of his payment. The physician has packed his bag. You are sitting up, bandaged and feeling remarkably clear-headed. Your master, relieved and impressed, is counting out a few silver coins into the doctor's outstretched palm. The transaction is complete. That one small, strange question hangs in the air. A final piece of housekeeping from this bizarre medical drama. What about the leeches? There on the linen cloth lie the three heroes of the hour. Torpid and swollen with your bad blood, they are no longer sleek instruments of healing. They are living receptacles of your former ailment. They cannot simply be discarded like a used bandage. Their fate is a matter of some medical and practical consideration. The physician prods one with his forceps. They have done good work, he proclaims. They are filled with the boy's excess, sanguine humor, which was overheated and tending towards corruption. To him, these leeches are now biologically hazardous material. To release them back into the wild would be irresponsible. It would be like releasing 3 tiny, wiggling bottles of disease into a healthy pond, potentially upsetting the local ecosystem of humors. So what are the options? The most common and most final solution was simply to kill them. This was often done by sprinkling them with a generous amount of salt, which dehydrates and kills them quickly. It was seen as unnecessary, if slightly ungrateful, and for the creatures that had just cured you. They had served their purpose, absorbed the illness, and now they had to be destroyed along with it. A more elaborate method for a particularly corrupt humor might involve burning them. The idea was that fire, the ultimate purifying element, was the only way to ensure the complete and total destruction of the malady they contained. You can imagine a physician gravely consigning the 3 bloated leeches to the embers of a fire, a final, solemn ritual to mark the end of your headache. However, leeches were valuable. They were a commodity, and killing them after a single use seemed wasteful to many practitioners, especially to the frugal apothecary or the busy barber-surgeon. This led to a much more peculiar and frankly disgusting practice, making the leeches disgorge the blood so they could be used again. This process, a form of leech recycling, was known as stripping. The practitioner would take the engorged leech, hold it by its tail end, and run their thumbnail and forefinger firmly along its body, squeezing the ingested blood out of its mouth. It was a crude and effective way to empty the leech and make it hungry again. Another method was to place the leeches in a weak solution of salt water or vinegar, which would cause them to regurgitate their meal. This practice is the subject of a significant historical and medical debate. The top minus tier, university minus trained physicians like yours would have been horrified by this. They would have considered it a dangerous and unsanitary practice. In their view, a leech that had absorbed bad humors was now contaminated. To use it on another patient would be to risk transferring the first patient's illness to the second. They argued passionately that leeches should be a single minus use instrument. But for the less scrupulous, or more pragmatic practitioners, a leech was a leech. They might keep separate jars, one for clean leeches and one for used leeches that were being purified for reuse. An apothecary might buy used leeches from a barber minus surgeon at a discount, strip them, and then sell them again to a less discerning customer. The black market for second-hand leeches was a small but very real part of your medical world. What is the fate of your three saviors today? Your physician is a man of high principle. He would never countenance recycling them. He gestures to your master's wife. Dispose of them. Use salt. He commands. He considers them medical waste. But he might also offer a third, more philosophical option. Some texts suggested that a leech that has performed a noble cure could be given a noble retirement. It could be placed in a special, clean jar with fresh moss and water, and allowed to live out the rest of its natural life in comfort, slowly digesting its final, heroic meal. This meal your blood might take it 6 months, or even a year, to fully process. It would be a living trophy of a successful cure, a venerable pensioner of the medical arts. Your master's wife, being a practical woman with little time for sentimentality towards blood-sucking worms, will likely choose the salt. But as she takes the linen cloth, you feel a strange, fleeting pang of gratitude for the three bloated creatures. They were the instruments of your salvation. Their brief, strange intersection with your life is over. Their work is done. Their fate, like so many things in your world, lies somewhere between high-minded theory and grim, practical reality. You are back on your feet. The next day, you return to your duties in the workshop, your head miraculously clear. The only reminder of your ordeal is a faint, dull ache at your temples and the slightly self-conscious feeling of the bandage wrapped around your head. Your fellow apprentices look at you with a new respect. You have undergone the learned physician's cure. You have been leeched. Your experience has made you something of a local expert. When a neighbor complains of a throbbing joint, or the baker's wife suffers from a persistent fever, you find yourself explaining the elegant logic of the four humors, and you begin to understand that your headache was just one of a vast symphony of ailments for which the noble leech was considered the perfect conductor. These versatile little creatures were the closest thing your world had to a panacea. If you had been suffering from gout, for instance, a notoriously painful condition causing swollen, hot joints, particularly in the big toe, the physician's approach would have been similar. Gout was seen as a classic example of a hot humor, a mix of corrupted blood and choler, settling in the extremities. A direct application of leeches to the swollen toe was the treatment of choice, intended to drain the fiery humor and reduce the agonizing inflammation. You can picture the wealthiest merchants and nobles of the land, their rich diet predisposing them to the condition, sitting with their foot elevated, a cluster of leeches diligently working on their big toe. Fevers, too, were a prime target for leech therapy. A fever was the most obvious sign of an excess of heat in the body, a clear indication that the blood was boiling, while a full blown venesection at the arm was common for high fevers. A more moderate or persistent fever would often be treated with a strategic application of leeches, perhaps to the chest or back, to gently cool the system and restore equilibrium. But the leech's resume extends far beyond these hot ailments. They were used for almost everything you can imagine. A patient suffering from difficulty breathing or a pain in the chest, what you might call pneumonia or pleurisy, would be treated with leeches applied directly to the ribcage to unburden the lungs. Skin conditions, from angry red rashes to boils and abscesses, were also treated by wringing the afflicted area with leeches to draw out the poison and purify the skin. One of the more peculiar, and perhaps poignant, applications was in the treatment of love sickness. This was considered a genuine and serious medical condition, a form of melancholy where the mind became obsessed and the humors fell into a state of chaotic imbalance. A patient, typically a young man or woman, would exhibit signs of obsession, loss of appetite, sleep swings, and wild emotional swings. The physician might diagnose this as the result of hot vapors from the heart rising to the brain. In a common prescription, a few leeches applied to the chest, directly over the heart, to cool the passions and drain the excess heat of unrequited love. Even mental afflictions were treated with leeches. A patient suffering from frenzy or mania, a state of wild, agitated delirium, was seen as having a dangerously overheated brain. Leeches applied to the head and neck were a standard procedure to calm the patient by relieving the cerebral pressure. It was a physical solution to a psychological problem, a direct consequence of a medical system that did not separate the mind from the body. The historical debate here is about specificity. Did medieval physicians truly believe the leech was a cure minus all, or did they have a more nuanced understanding of when to use it? The textual evidence from medical treatises suggests a high degree of specificity. Physicians like yours would write at length about which type of ailment required leeches, which required the lancet, which required purging, and which required herbal remedies. However, looking at patient records and popular accounts, it can seem like leeches were prescribed with an almost knee-jerk regularity. It's likely that, as with any medical tool, there was a spectrum of use, from the highly specific and theoretical applications of elite physicians to the more general, it minus can't minus hurt minus to minus try approach of a village barber minus surgeon. You have become part of a grand tradition. The use of leeches for healing is ancient, mentioned in Egyptian papyri and in the works of ancient Indian and Greek physicians. You are a link in an unbroken chain of belief stretching back thousands of years, from a king's gout to a maiden's broken heart to your own apprentice's headache. The small, slimy, unassuming leech was the great equalizer, the humble servant called upon to soothe the endless aches and fevers of the human condition. Years go by. You are no longer an apprentice, but a master of your own craft. You have a family, a workshop, and a few apprentices of your own who occasionally complain of headaches. You tell them the story of your own miraculous cure, but it feels like a tale from another time. The world is changing, and with it, the certainties you once held are beginning to fray. The great, unshakable edifice of humoral medicine, which stood for 2,000 years, is starting to show cracks in its foundation. The age of the leech, though not over, is entering its long, slow twilight. This decline is not a sudden event. It is a gradual erosion, a slow shift in thinking that happens over generations. It begins in the great universities and anatomy theaters of Europe. A man named Andreas Vesalius, working in Padua in the 16th century, starts to do something radical. He dissects human bodies, not just animals, and he begins to notice things. He sees that the human jaw is one bone, not two as Galen had written. He sees that the great network of blood vessels in the liver, which Galen described as the source of blood, isn't there. He publishes a book, De Humanique Opus Fabricae, filled with beautiful, terrifyingly accurate drawings of the human body. He doesn't directly challenge Galen's theories, but he chips away at his authority by showing that his anatomical observations were flawed. A century later, an English physician named William Harvey makes an even more revolutionary discovery. Through careful experimentation and observation, he demonstrates that blood circulates. It is not produced in the liver and consumed by the body, as Galen had taught. Instead, it is pumped by the heart in a continuous loop through the arteries and veins. This single discovery is a dagger to the heart of humoral theory. If blood circulates, it cannot pool or become stagnant in the way the old theory required. The entire mechanical basis for bloodletting is thrown into question. These new ideas spread slowly. Your local physician might dismiss them as the fashionable nonsense of radicals. He would still trust his Galen and his Avicenna. But his son, who goes to study at a more modern university, will read Vesalius and Harvey. He will come back with new ideas, new language. He will talk about the body as a machine, not a garden of humors. He will be more interested in organs and systems than in temperaments and vapors. The changes are not just in the high-minded world of theory. They are in the practice of medicine itself. New tools and new ideas emerge. The microscope, once a toy for wealthy gentlemen, is refined. Scientists begin to see tiny animalcules swimming in a drop of pond water. The idea of disease as an invasion by an external agent, rather than an internal imbalance, begins to take shape, though it will not be fully formed for centuries. New chemical remedies are introduced. From the New World come plants like cinchona bark, which contains quinine and proves to be astonishingly effective against the fevers of malaria. This is a direct challenge to the old ways. A humoral physician would treat a fever with cooling remedies like bloodletting or gentle herbs. But quinine works without any regard for the patient's humors. It just works. Every patient cured by this new chemical specific is another small crack in the old foundation. The historical debate here is about the persistence of bloodletting, especially with leeches, long after the theory behind it was discredited. Why did it continue? There are several reasons. Firstly, tradition. For thousands of years, it was what doctors did. It was what patients expected. To not offer it could be seen as neglect. Secondly, for certain conditions involving inflammation and swelling, it probably offered some genuine, temporary relief. It reduced blood pressure and relieved the pain of fluid build up. It felt like it was doing something. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, for most of human history, doctors had very few effective treatments. Bloodletting was one of the most dramatic and impressive things they could do. In the absence of a better alternative, they clung to the tool they knew best. You see the change in your own lifetime. Your grandchildren, when they get sick, are less likely to be leeched and more likely to be given a specific chemical powder from the apothecary, who now calls himself a chemist. The language of humors is spoken less by physicians and more by old women and poets. To call someone sanguine or melancholy is becoming a description of their personality, not a medical diagnosis. The noble leech is not gone. It is still used, especially in rural areas and for traditional ailments. But its status has been diminished. It is no longer a frontline, high-tech medical instrument guided by ancient wisdom. It is becoming a symbol of an older, quieter, and increasingly obsolete way of thinking. Its slow slide from the center of medicine to its fringes has begun. The cure that once saved your life is becoming a curious relic of a bygone age. You are at the end of your long story. The memory of the blacksmith in your head, the somber physician, and the 3 tiny doctors has faded into a gentle, historical haze. The world that believed so deeply in their power is gone, replaced by a new one of incomprehensible wonders and strange new certainties. The leech, you assume, has taken its final bow, exiting the stage of history to return to the quiet, muddy ponds from whence it came. Its time as a celebrated medical marvel officially over. But the story of the leech, you would be surprised to learn, has one final, astonishing plot twist. Let's leap forward in time, far beyond the age of steam and electricity, into a world you could not possibly imagine. A world of sterile operating theaters, gleaming stainless steel, and impossibly precise machines. A world where surgeons can reattach a severed finger, a thumb, or even an entire hand, using microscopes and sutures finer than a single strand of your hair. In this world, a surgeon has just completed a miraculous 10-hour operation. They have painstakingly reconnected bone, tendons, nerves, and, most crucially, the arteries of a patient's severed finger. The arteries are the high minus pressure vessels that pump fresh, oxygenated blood into the finger. Reconnecting them is the easier part of the job. The real problem lies with the veins. The veins are the low minus pressure, thin minus walled vessels that are supposed to drain the used blood out of the finger. They are much smaller, more fragile, and far more difficult to stitch together than the arteries. In this particular operation, the surgeon has succeeded, but the tiny, reconnected veins are struggling. They are collapsing. They cannot drain the blood fast enough. The newly reattached finger begins to swell. It turns from a healthy pink to a dusky, purplish minus blue. This is venous congestion. The fresh arterial blood is pumping in, but the old venous blood can't get out. The finger is filling up like a water balloon. The pressure builds, cutting off the fresh blood supply. If this continues, all the surgeon's miraculous work will be for nothing. The tissues will die, and the finger will be lost. The surgical team tries everything. They elevate the hand. They administer powerful modern drugs to thin the blood. Nothing works. The congestion is getting worse. And it is in this moment of high minus tech desperation that the surgeon turns to a solution that would be instantly recognizable to your medieval physician. They call for the leeches. But these are not leeches from a local pond. These are clinical grade high root or medicinal is. Bred in a sterile, controlled environment, a leech farm. They arrive in a special container, clean, hungry, and ready for work. The surgeon, using sterile forceps, applies one of the leeches to the tip of the swollen, purplish finger. The effect is almost immediate. The leech attaches, performs its painless, microscopic incision, and begins to draw blood. But it's not the small amount of blood it consumes that matters. The real magic, as we know, is in its saliva. It injects its potent cocktail of uridine and vasodilates into the fingertip. The uridine prevents clotting, keeping the tiny wound open and bleeding freely for hours after the leech detaches. This creates a channel, a release valve, for the congested venous blood to escape. The leech and the subsequent choosing act as a temporary, biological drainage system. It gives the patient's own damaged, struggling veins the crucial time. They need a few days, perhaps to heal, strengthen, and start working properly on their own. And so, in a sterile, 21st century hospital, you would witness a scene straight from your own past. A patient, lying in a bed, with a tiny, dark creature diligently attached to their body, performing a cure. The circle is complete. The little physician, after centuries in the wilderness of quackery, has been rehabilitated. The final historical irony is that the leech has been welcomed back into the fold of medicine, not because of some new appreciation for the wisdom of the four humors, but for the very reasons that made it so effective in the first place: its unique, potent, and highly specialized biochemistry. The magic has been explained, but it is no less magical for it. The story that began with a hammer behind your eyes in a dusty medieval workshop ends here. In the bright, quiet hum of a modern surgical ward, the humble leech, the slimy instrument that soothed your headache, has found a new and vital purpose. A ghost from medicine's past returning to become a hero in its future. It is a testament to the fact that nature often holds the most elegant solutions, and that sometimes the oldest cures have secrets yet to teach us. The story is a memory now, a gentle green landscape that exists only in your mind. The path you walked through the Victorian countryside has now become a path into your own deepened, quiet sleep. Let the details soften and blur. The faces of the collectors, the names of the ferns, the dates on the specimen labels. Let them all drift away like spores on a soft breeze. There is nothing left to learn, nothing left to analyze. The journey is complete. You can feel yourself drifting now, floating down into that comfortable, peaceful place. Each breath is a gentle wave, carrying you further from the shore of Wakefulness. The narrative has ended, but the feeling remains: a sense of quiet, of greenness, of serene and ancient things. Imagine a cool, shaded glen, deep in the dream-minus woods. The light is soft and dappled here. The only sound is the whisper of leaves and the faintest trickle of water over moss-minus covered stones. This is a place of absolute peace. You can rest here. Let the last of your thoughts settle like fallen leaves on the forest floor. There is only stillness now, the gentle dark, the profound and simple act of letting go. Rest now. Sleep well.